The war should have been lost. Men were starving, freezing, already halfway to the grave. And then the food started arriving. Hot, fresh, impossible. Some swore it tasted like home. Others said it tasted like something waiting for them. They didn't know it yet, but the meals keeping them alive were not meant for the living. And far to the north, a woman, a witch, and a single iron pot were about to change the fate of the war and defy death itself. Grab your tankards. This is a tale of the war wife and the kitchen witch.
In the frost-bound days, when the fjords ran thick with ice and ravens danced on the smoke winds of war, there lived a young woman named Edith, whose husband Bjorn had led his war band to fight in the southern lands. He was broad of shoulder and thick of beard, with hands like blacksmith anvils and eyes blue as glacier ice. They called him Bjorn the Thunder, for his war cry cracked louder than a storm, and his foes often fled before his shadow reached them. Yet in the long houses and homesteads, among kin and cattle, he was known by another name, Soft Heart. For though he could slay bears with his hands and shatter shields with a single swing, Bjorn's heart beat tender as a harpstring. He once halted mid-charge to cradle a crying child found in a burning hut. No blade earns glory wet with the tears of babes, he said, and his warriors followed him away from the battle in silence, the firelight dancing on their humbled brows. The war had come like a thunderbird's cry, sudden, fierce, and echoing. The sons of the north rode out, clad in iron and resolve, to meet the steel tide that poured in from the Dusklands. Behind them they left a village gripped by silence. As he rode to battle once more, Bjorn kissed Edith's brow, whispering, "Keep the hearth warm. My heart is in it." Edith waited with the patience of the pines. But the winds brought no word of an end to the war, only bitter snow and broken shields. One dusk, as the wind howled like a hungry wolf, Edith sought the warmth of the Longhouse Tavern of her village. There the men grew drunk on mead and tales of battle, and old women cast bones by the firelight. A crooked man, his fingers blackened by soot, dragged an old kettle to the hearth. "Oh, I found it rusted shut, deep in the Barrowlands," he laughed. "Full of curses, no doubt, but we'll boil them out." Just as he reached and set the kettle into the flames, Edith heard a small sound, shrill like the wind through the reeds, a whimper, almost human. Edith stood. "Wait," she said. The tavern fell quiet. Kneeling, she opened the kettle with her bare hands, untouched by the heat. From within sprang a tiny creature no smaller than a spoon. She wore an apron of cobweb, and her eyes gleamed like river pebbles. It was a kitchen witch, one of the hearth spirits of old, captured and bound by iron and neglect. The creature blinked and curtsied, as only a witch no higher than a ladle could. "You have spared me from the flame, warm-handed one. I am Thisla, bound to serve where I find my rescue. Your kitchen shall be my cauldron, and your meals will carry my magic." Edith took the creature home in her pocket. That night, with Thisla's whispering guiding her hand, she baked a barley pie stuffed with smoked fish and onions, brushed with a honeyed mead. The aroma rose like a battle horn. She packed the meal and sent it with a messenger to the front lines. Each dawn she rose before Soul's eye kissed the earth, not from rest, but from habit. Sleep had long since abandoned her, slipping out into the cold like a faithless guest. What remained was purpose. She ground blackroot and barley by hand, the stone biting into her palms, until they split and bled. Still, she did not stop. Blood mixed with grain, and she whispered, no apology for it. "Let it strengthen them," she murmured. "Let it mean something." The goats learned her footsteps. They did not run. She would rest her forehead to theirs before the blade fell, whispering thanks into their coarse fur, her breath trembling in the frost. No kill was quick enough, and no prayer long enough. Bones cracked beneath her hands as she split them for marrow. She boiled them until the broth turned thick and pale, until the scent filled not just the house, but the village, and then the road beyond it. Thisla watched from the rim of the pot, her small fingers tracing the steam. More, the kitchen witch would whisper. It must carry farther. And so it did. By midwinter, the cauldrons were too large for one woman. She did not use one. She used 3, and then 5, and then all the iron her village could spare. The fires never died. They were fed with broken chairs, fence posts, splintered carts, anything that would burn. Smoke rose day and night, a pillar against the pale sky, as though her home had become a beacon or a warning. Her arms thickened, her back bent, her hands lost their softness, then their feeling. Still she stirred. The villagers began to gather without being asked, not out of duty, out of something quieter and heavier. Old men, too brittle for shield walls, hauled water from frozen wells, breaking ice with shaking hands. Children carried bundles of kindling twice their size, their boots worn thin and leaking. Women who had buried sons and husbands stood shoulder to shoulder with her, kneading dough in silence. No songs were sung. This was not joy. This was defiance. The war trains grew longer. Sleds groaned under the weight of their labor. Kettles sealed with wax, loaves wrapped in birch bark, smoked meats hardened against the cold. Elk strained against their harnesses, their breath rising in thick plumes as they pulled the food toward men who had begun to forget what warmth tasted like. And still it was not enough. It was never enough. One night, when the wind screamed like something dying in the hills, Edith stood alone over the fire. The village slept. Even Thisla was silent. Edith stared into the broth as it rolled and churned, her reflection breaking apart in its surface. I cannot reach him, she whispered. The words felt heavier spoken aloud. For all her work, for all her sacrifice, she still did not know if Bjorn lived, or if he had already fallen, hungry. Her grip tightened on the ladle until her knuckles whitened. I will not fail him, she said, voice low and raw. Not while I still draw breath. She whispered words that were not prayers, but something close enough to be mistaken for them. The food grew stronger. Men who ate it stood longer, fought harder, lived when they should have fallen. Some swore they could hear voices in the steam. Others said they dreamed of home so vividly it hurt to wake. In the final season of war, when the front lines grew teeth and drank deep of the warriors, it was Edith's meals, firebound and spirit-rich, that kept the shield-bearers standing. Some whispered that her bread gave dreams of home even to the dying. Battles turned. The enemy fled. Victory, slow but steady, rode in on the scent of her meals. When the war ended and the sons of Arnheim returned, with less flesh and more ghost in their eyes, they carried her name like a prayer. The men were ragged, bloodied, but triumphant, and Edith ran to the harbor, heart alight, only to see Bjorn's shield return to her on a spear shaft, blackened and broken. He fell, an old warrior told her, in the final surge of battle. Your broths could not save him, Edith, but his men lived because of it. She wept for Bjorn, for the hearth unshared, for the child never born, for the silence that now haunted her halls. Her tears fell like rain and would not cease. But her story does not end there. Stay tuned for part 2.